Have you ever wondered why we sleep? Why on earth would we spend a third of our lives in this unconscious state, vulnerable to predators? Surely in millions of years of evolution, some creature would have evolved the ability to not sleep, right? But none of them have. Every animal we know of sleeps. Some just a few hours a day, some more than half the day, but every single one sleeps. So in humans, sleep takes the form of it's 4 different stages, each with a distinctive brainwave signature. REM and non-REM sleep. And these recur in 90-minute cycles, tending towards more REM later in the night. So the different stages. Non-REM sleep is slow waves. This is really cool. It's actually, these waves are thousands of neurons pulsing in sync at once, several times a second. And this is also where some of the metabolic debris is cleared from your brain. What NREM seems to do is store the information that you've learned during the day, taking it from short-term storage and putting it in more secure long-term storage, also clearing out the short-term for the next day. So REM, rapid eye movement sleep, this is the shallowest sleep. This is where we dream. That's what causes the rapid eye movements. And so what does REM do for us? So this basically replays what happened during the day, and this is where your knowledge is integrated into your mental model of the world. This is where we have these intuitive leaps and literally solve problems in our sleep. So this starts to answer this question, this mystery of sleep. Sleep is not separate from consciousness. It's all part of the same cycle of receiving information, processing and storing it, and integrating it into our mental model. So what causes us to actually fall asleep, there's 2 different processes at work. One, the homeostatic process, is basically a slow buildup of urge to sleep, and the other, your circadian rhythms. And as you see here, it's essentially the difference between these 2 that is your urge to sleep. As the circadian rhythm drops and your sleep pressure builds up, you sleep. And adenosine is the molecule that creates this sleep pressure, and caffeine is an adenosine antagonist. So caffeine makes you not notice the adenosine signal that makes you sleepy. It doesn't actually prevent adenosine buildup though, which is why a few hours later when you've metabolized your coffee, you get this crash. So what happens when we don't get sleep? If you remember nothing else, remember this. Your motor functions decay a lot. Tired driving is as bad as drunk driving. It is actually responsible for more fatalities every year. Don't do it. We also are impaired in our ability to learn. In order to learn something effectively, we need good sleep both before and the night after you learn it in order to retain it. And in case that's not enough, chronic sleep loss causes all sorts of bad things. Immune system problems, higher rates of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, and weight gain. And if you know anybody who says, oh, I only need 6 hours of sleep a night, they're wrong. Everybody, almost everybody, needs 8 hours of sleep a night. What happens is people who think they need less are fooling themselves. They don't actually, their ability to recognize their impairment is harmed. You also can't regain lost sleep by sleeping more the next day. It doesn't work. And because you get more REM later in the night, if you lose just a little sleep, you're losing a lot of REM sleep. So pretty much our whole society has problems sleeping. Why is that? 2 main reasons. One is we do all these things to mess with our circadian rhythms. We have electric lights, constant temperatures, and of course caffeine and alcohol. You might think, oh, sleeping pills, no problem. This could be a talk in and of itself. We're just starting to scrape the surface of this, but sleeping pills not only don't do much for you, but they are harmful in all sorts of ways. So how you can get more sleep. One is, of course, turn down the lights in the evening, put away the smartphones, TV an hour before or more before bed, cut down caffeine, and, cut down the alcohol. And other things, if you have trouble sleeping, keeping a regular schedule is really important, it turns out. And also letting your body's core temperature drop a bit, make your room a little bit colder at night, like 65 or so, and taking a warm bath before bed actually brings blood to the surface, which actually lowers your core body temperature, which is part of that circadian process. And last, remember that you don't fall asleep immediately. So if you're going to get 8 hours of sleep, make sure you give yourself 8.5 hours in order to get there. And with that, I wish you sweet dreams.
Yeah.
I want to know why sleeping pills are bad.
A couple reasons. So one is they're not actually making you sleep exactly, they're sedating you. And the sleep you get as a result is disrupted. And so a lot of the benefits that you'd normally get from sleep, you're not getting. So you're tricked into thinking you're rested, but you're actually not. Also, with the newer sleeping pills, I mean, this is, well, benzodiazepines like Xanax and Ambien and the other new ones, the sedative effect actually lasts past the night, and so you're partially sedated the next morning, in addition to being drowsy, which is already messing up your reaction time. So people who take sleeping pills, there's something like a 4 times higher risk of death, premature death, for people who are using these regularly. And part of the reason for that is a much higher increase in traffic accidents. So people are, drowsy, thinking that they're awake, but actually drowsy and partly sedated when they're getting on the road. And there's all sorts of other things that happen from not getting enough sleep. They're still getting that. So they're, the heart disease problems, the immune system problems, they're still suffering from those. And the funny thing is that depending on the study, like the new sleeping pills don't really seem any better than placebos in terms of getting you to sleep. So yeah, they're not worth it. Start from this side. Yeah.
I have a new baby. So, any recommendations on how to get him to sleep through the night?
I do not, but actually, I do have a. Let's see, where is the?
So that I can sleep through the night, obviously.
Yes. Whoops.
You can do the drop down
I don't
first.
care if I sedate him.
Yeah. Yeah. So for references.
Bonus slide.
Yeah. Bonus slide, right? So a lot. I think most of what I've covered here is covered in this book, which is written by the guy who runs the sleep neurobiology lab over in Berkeley. It's awesome. If you're curious about the topic, they go into a lot of detail, including all the experiments that have told us things like, what's the difference between REM and non-REM sleep and all this stuff. And they go into a lot about dreams too, which is cool, but that would be like 4 different talks here. And the NIH has a nice website called A Good Night's Sleep. You can go to that address or scan the code, and I think that has some stuff on children. So I'd check there. It's a lot shorter than the book too, so this is the TLDR right over here. So
Sarah?
Yeah.
Oh, so I thought it was intriguing. You were talking about the neurons pulsing in
sync,
in all together, and then about pushing metabolic debris out. Is this like literally like a physical pumping or an electrical pumping of the debris out of the cells?
No.
Or are these just like related phenomena?
Just related.
Okay.
The debris is mostly seems to be coming out of the glial cells, which are the ones that wrap around your neurons, and the pulsing is actually the electrical signals in the neurons themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So.
So maybe unrelated processes that are occurring at the same time. Or,
Right.
Yeah.
Or perhaps related in some other way.
Yeah. Oh, bonus question about the giraffes. 1.9 hours.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
is that weird? Like, do they have any like ideas about why there's like such a big factor?
Not sure in the case of giraffes. I know that there wasn't much in the book. I did a little extra reading on that, and it seems that a number of the animals that are on the shorter end of the cycle are like
Prey animals?
well, I mean, a lot of prey animals are all over the spectrum, and there's no one thing that correlates well with this. I mean, we know there's a whole bunch of different factors. but I know that a lot of the shorter ones seemed to be land. Yeah, ones that aren't mentioned here. There are a lot of like grazers and like land herd animals that are in the lower end. Like I think cows, sheep, goats are on the low end also, so that might be part of it. But there's a lot of different factors there.
What do they do?
What's it?
They're awake all night.
Counter animation.
They wish that somebody made a cervical pillow for giraffes.
True.
You know anything about alternative sleep schedules?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes, a little bit. And I was talking with someone about this earlier. I'd read years ago that people used to sleep in two different blocks. If you read in Western European, like Elizabethan age literature, they talk about first sleep and second sleep. And in between, people might be awake for a couple minutes, or they might be a couple hours or something. It turns out that's pretty much just Northwestern Europe. That wasn't really observed elsewhere. Habits vary from place to place. There was some remote tribe that was discovered a couple of years, at this point probably a decade or more ago, but where they only slept like 6.5 hours a night, and there were a bunch of news articles like, this shows we don't really need 8 hours of sleep, and their life expectancy was also something like 50 or 60 years, so maybe not the best models. But one thing that does seem like as close as we can come to a sense of what is natural for people is sort of the Mediterranean style of taking a midday siesta, like for a nap for about a half an hour or so, sometime at or a little after midday, and then one solid block of sleep at night. And that seems to be probably, like, if we were going to go for an optimal solution, that seems to be it. Now, I have trouble napping myself. I've never tried this, so I can't speak to it.
Do we have one last question? Crystal.
What about jet lag? How can you switch your circadian rhythm back to normal?
Very good question. Let's see. So the melatonin is part of one of the signals that mediates the circadian rhythm, right? So this is something we produce naturally, but these other things like temperature and light signals affect when our body releases the melatonin. So there's a couple ways that you can sort of prime yourself to get over jet lag sooner by the judicious application of caffeine at some points, and then like bright lights in some places and dim lights at other times. But melatonin is also really good for readjusting you, and you have to take it at like the right time. It's something like 1 to 3 hours before sleep, I think, but you should look that up before trying it. I will say that there are a couple of apps out there right now for jet lag. I've only tried one of them once. That was pretty awesome. That was going from England back to here, and going backwards is actually, if you've thought that coming back is easier, you're correct. There's evidence for this, and it's partly because of this interplay of factors here, basically. But which would be another talk in and of itself. But there are actually apps out there where you can give it your starting time zone, your finish time zone, and when you're leaving, and they will then tell you, okay, drink caffeine at this point, bright lights here, then dim lights at this point. Now take your melatonin. And coming back from England, I shifted back in about a day and a half, maybe 2 days. It was about as good as I could have expected. And that was actually without melatonin. So.
How long were you gone for?
A week.
Okay.
Yeah, 10 days. So.
I have a great jet lag trick.
What is it?
What is it?
I'm not going to tell you, no.
We have to pay for your app.
And I don't know if this, jives with science, but it has worked for me. And I read it having some scientific basis, but the key is to fast. So you disrupt your digestive circadian rhythm by fasting, and then when you get to your destination, you break the fast at a normal time. So then you reestablish your circadian rhythm and your sleep pattern follows suit.
Interesting. Yeah, don't know anything that would either support or
And
oppose
the
that.
fast length is like 16 hours.
You like have a big burrito so you can sleep on the plane, and then like you get there in the morning and you're ready because the big burrito helped you sleep on the plane.
Hibernating, so I have to wake up and go to the
It's a long enough flight,
Yeah,
right?
the guy who asked for
Can you
it.
get those sleeping burritos over the counter?
Chipotle counter.
All right, thank you, Dan.